This is my first atheist event. I usually go to skeptics events when I see Rebecca and Professor Dawkins. And at those events, a common question that we ask is, do we have to be skeptical? Is it appropriate to be a skeptic about everything, including religion, or can we leave that bit out? Because for pragmatic reasons, discussing homeopathy and all these other things, you don't want to offend people by bringing up religion. Obviously, that's not a concern here, where the atheism is the whole point. But I was thinking about, does it work the other way? For instance, when you're talking to somebody and you're discussing their religion, should you leave the skepticism about other things aside, or can you say, your lucky rabbit's foot isn't helping either?
I'd like to address that too. Yes, thank you. This is going to be fun, isn't it? I'm pretty sure that in the movie Religulous, that Bill Maher actually said that he was not an atheist. I'm pretty sure he said he was an agnostic. And there's another problem. I gave a speech to the atheist community of Austin not long ago where I was talking about the difference between atheism and agnosticism. And one of the reasons that so many atheists in the world, like me, did not realize they were atheists was because of that stigma of supposedly knowing that there was no God. No reasonable person takes that stance. Indeed, Carl Sagan, who many of us revere as one of the leading atheists of our time, he did not call himself an atheist. He denied that title because he said that an atheist knows a great deal more than I do. But it's only because he was a victim of the society much the same way that I was. I was led to believe a falsehood my entire life. It was misdefined. And if you are not convinced that a God exists, then you are atheist. If you do, and it's perfectly reasonable to be an agnostic atheist. You don't believe that a God exists, and you say that there's no way that we could know if a God existed or not, what its properties are. That's the agnosticism. It's a choice between whether you know or whether you don't know. I prefer not to say that I know what I don't know. But neither do I possess a conviction in the existence of a God, because I'm not all about atheism. Atheism is a conclusion that I've reached because I am about empirical rationalism, about not stating what I can't verify. If it's one thing to say that you believe something, okay, fine. But when you start stating it as fact, then I want you to back it up. And if you can't back it up, most societies, I think, would call that a lie. And that's the position I have to be in. Simply being honest in my inquiry about the world has inevitably led me to atheism. And I think if your perspective is like mine, where you don't make allowances for certain beliefs, you will end up atheist also.
My question is not directed at anyone specifically in the panel, but to kind of all of you. As you all mentioned either feminism or violence of language or passivity in atheism. And I'm wondering when we talk, I know we're saying not to talk about the violence of language and calling someone an idiot or threatening someone, but I'm wondering if our use of language such as anti-religion, say no to this, fight religion, is possibly ostracizing. We were talking about women earlier on, why they're not getting as involved. And Helene Cizou and Julia Kristeva, two feminist theorists, talk about binary language, yes, no, anti-pro. So if possibly in the media or PR kind of thing of talking about instead of anti-religion, pro-human rights, or yes to free thought as opposed to no to something else, and I'm wondering just if you could comment on whether that's maybe going too far and taking away violence of language, or if it's something that would possibly open up to other people who feel intimidated by atheism, which I certainly did at first.
I'd like to comment too that at least in the United States, most atheists will say that they are former Christians, and that most of them take as the reason why they are now atheist did not actually come from the statements that any atheist made. It wasn't the arguments of science. It wasn't the evidence. It was the hypocrisy and idiocy of the religions that they were involved with. I think we have several examples of people from that mindset here, where you've reached a limit where you can't side with a group that is this bizarre anymore or insane. And you have to remember also when you're talking to these people, it seems to me that there are the people that have never questioned their belief, and you have to take that into account. But when you draw them into this discussion, they very quickly diverge into one of two sets. They, at least when we're talking about creationism, when they go to defend creationism, they will either find out that the things that they were taught were wrong, and they will change, and then they will become an ally. And you have to remember that they are a potential ally when you're talking to them. This is someone you ultimately are going to help if they understand your position, and they will thank you for that. They can also side the other way, where they decide that the delusion, whichever word you want to use, is more important to them than truth. And once they begin lying to defend their belief, just leave them alone.
Hi, my question is for Tom, and you mentioned that we need a weaker form of atheism to counterpoint the hard atheists that people seem to get so offended by. But it's been my experience anyway from seeing other atheists argue, or even from my own conversations. It doesn't take much to get labelled a militant atheist, like even bringing it up at all. So what would your idea of a weak atheist be?
I often get the opposite response where people think I'm nice until they meet me. One of the things that I like to employ is the tactic, if you want to go for a soft atheist, try a militant agnostic. I don't know and you don't know either.
I'd like to get the panel's comments on the various platforms of communication. So, not what the message is, but like where the message is. I mean, there's a good variety on the panel, right? We can go from YouTube, blogs, TV, and books, right? So, like it seems like of all of them, it'd be the internet where it might be the toughest. People can make shit up on the internet a lot easier than the other platforms of communication. So maybe that's the toughest out of them all. And because you have to wade through all that crap to get your message out there, it's maybe not the most effective platform. So whichever, the most effective and the toughest, things.
I'm very pleased with the YouTube atheist community. There's a great deal of talent out there. There are people that are producing very well-researched videos with a lot of good content. And whenever anyone gets anything wrong, and I'm sorry to say I know this from experience, when you make an error in having an argument with a theist, whether you're talking about science or what have you, there's a very good chance that if you make an error, they won't catch it because they don't understand what you're talking about anyway. But your own side will. Scientists are, by and large, unforgiving of error. They will point it out. And so you do have a community where people actually do care that the information that they get out there is accurate. And they try to make sure that it is accurate before they press send to upload that. I mean, there are people for whom accountability really does matter, and that they feel that they're making a contribution. And by the number of subscriptions that they get, a lot of these people are making contribution. I was lucky in that I got in early in the wave of YouTube atheists because there's a lot of very talented, very brilliant people out there. If you name a topic, I'll show you an expert who's posting on the web. Really an excellent resource. And the advantage that we have in YouTube is that we are going up, especially in Texas, we have more mega churches in Dallas than I think any other city. And a mega church is a church with like 4,000 seats or more. We have churches where we had people like Olstein who had to buy a stadium so that he could fit the 50,000 head-bobbing, mouth-breathing, glassy-eyed wanna-believers. And they just eat up whatever he says because it's all emotional. There's nothing that's defined. There's nothing that's factual. It's all an emotional thing. And then they hand over all that tithing. So he's making tens of millions of dollars a day. We're doing this altruistically for free. We're posting YouTube videos. We're not making anything out of this. This is for the benefit and the betterment of mankind. And I'm very happy to say there's a whole lot of people that feel the same way that I do that are making videos in that mode.
Absolutely. Thunderfoot has organized the Draw Mohammed Day for 2 years now, and I think this is quite widely accepted and considered a successful thing. But then he went a bit further with this hard drive full of copies of the Quran. I don't know if the panel is familiar with that. He's basically stuffed a hard drive full of Qurans, and then he's burned that hard drive with the idea that these digital files are being deleted anyway as internet caches are being purged. So burning the hard drive physically is not going that much further. But this act seems to have polarized the online community quite a bit, and he's taken quite a lot of heat for that. So I'm curious about what the panel thinks about that. Thank you.
As a co-host of the Magic Sandwich Show, on which Thunderfoot regularly appears, for those of you who are not familiar with him, he's a YouTube science advocate who got in just ahead of me and has probably 3 times the subscribers that I do. And it was almost inevitable, I guess, that his name would come up here. I owe the man a great deal, and I have a great deal of respect for him. I cannot say that I agree with every one of his actions, and not necessarily in the motivation. I understand his motivation, I do. But some of his tactics I don't entirely agree with, and I wouldn't fully endorse. Some, however, the initial Draw Muhammad Day that was done a year ago, I was fully behind that. You know, I drew my Muhammad right along with 10,000 other people. Mine, however, came out looking an awful lot like Bob Dobbs. But I don't advocate burning books, you know, in any sense. I understand that it's only a symbolic thing, and I understand the jest of what he's doing when it's all it is data digitally entered into it, and it's meaningless. And so burning it is showing how meaningless that is. I understand what he's doing with that. I don't like that he's gotten the flack that he gets out of this, because when you talk to the man directly, it turns out he's not as insane as some people want to say he is. He maybe doesn't present his argument very eloquently the first time. But then when you talk to him, oh, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. I understand it from your perspective. Now, why didn't you say it that way then? And that's all I can say on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I pretty much agree with you. I participated in the first Draw Muhammad Day as well. Mine was just a very respectful stick figure. It was interesting to see what people did do with Draw Muhammad Day, because, you know, of course some people did go really over the top and drew, you know, pedophilia-related stuff. And to me, though, I think the more powerful images are the respectful ones, because a violent reaction to something like that proves your point much better than when you draw something purposefully hateful and, you know, to incite violence, and then violence happens. Having a peaceful message that then gets attacked, I think, is a much better, better example of what we're fighting against. When it comes to, I mean, I haven't seen Thunderfoot's recent thing with the, I mean, as described though, I have to agree, you know, when you're burning something, when you're burning a book, even when it's on a hard drive, I mean, you're doing that because you want to capture the message that we all understand book burning carries, and that's a message of censorship, and it's not a message that I agree with. You know, but that's just my gut reaction. Maybe if I saw it, it would be closer to performance art and making us think about the meaning behind words. It doesn't really sound like that, but maybe it is. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. So, yeah.
I think a parallel case is PZ's desecration of a communion wafer, because that is that really is pure ridicule. I mean, that is saying this is just a cracker, and you are of course hurting people's feelings, but they deserve to have their feelings hurt because it is just a cracker. It's their fantasy, and it's not book burning.